Welcome, my bountiful friends. It's time to take your soma and get yourself over to the community centre for some good old social solidarity. Because today we're going to be delving deep into what it means to be a citizen in the world state in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. This story centres on some societal malcontents introducing an exotic and free-thinking individual to their society with disastrous results. As usual, I'll be diving deep into the psychological shadows, and as always there'll be as many spoilers as there are alphas and epsilons. And there will be plenty of opinions too, so you have been warned. But before we begin in earnest, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's greatly appreciated. Huxley began writing Brave New World in 1931, during a period of intense social, political and technological upheaval. The novel was conceived in France, where he had relocated to escape the distractions of London and immerse himself in a more contemplative environment. The Great Depression was underway following the Wall Street crash of 1928, and while the full force was felt mainly in the US, the rest of the world, including Europe, was suffering from it too. The world was also still reeling from the end of the First World War, 13 years prior. The USSR was established 9 years prior in 1922, and the Nazi Party was floating around in the zeitgeist as they continued on their march to power, which would be realised in 2 years' time in 1933. Already an established essayist and novelist, Huxley was deeply influenced by all of this, as well as the continued advance of unchecked rapid industrialisation and the rise of consumer culture and the ideological tensions of the interwar years. The spectre of totalitarianism and mechanisation of human life and the erosion of individuality were already a scent in the air for those with a keen nose and a sense for history. He drew on all these elements to create his novel's unique dystopian vision. The title Brave New World is drawn from William Shakespeare's The Tempest, specifically Miranda's line in Act 5, "O brave new world that has such people in it." Huxley's use of the phrase is deeply ironic, reflecting the naivete of a character who has failed to perceive the darker realities beneath surface appearance, a theme that resonates throughout this novel. The novel's development was also shaped by Huxley's engagement with science fiction traditions. He drew inspiration from earlier speculative works such as H.G. Wells' The Sleeper Awakes and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but dropped any Gothic elements and infused them instead with a distinctly modernist sensibility. At this time, the advancements in industrial technologies had the general public and high society alike speculating just where it would all end. And it must be remembered that this was before the horrors of the Soviet gulags, Nazi death camps and another world war, with a grand total in excess of 88 million deaths, came to pass. The novel was published on 4th of February 1932 by Chatto and Windus in the United Kingdom. The first edition featured cover art by Leslie Holland and ran to 311 pages. It was quickly released in the United States by Harper and Brothers, where its provocative themes and satirical tone sparked immediate interest. His vision of a society pacified by pleasure, conformity and synthetic happiness struck a nerve. Though Huxley denied having read Yevgeny Zamyatin's We, some critics noted thematic parallels between the two works, particularly in their portrayal of state control and the suppression of individuality. Regardless of direct influence, Brave New World emerged as a singular vision of dystopian imagination and philosophical critique to counter the utopian depictions that were promoted in the press and the world fairs at the time. In later years, he would revisit the themes of the novel in Brave New World Revisited, which was published in 1958. That was a non-fiction reflection on the real-world trajectory of the ideas he had fictionalized. He would also offer his own utopian counterpoint in 1962's novel Island, which suggested that the development of Brave New World was not merely a warning, but part of a larger inquiry into the possibilities of human evolution and societal design. Nearly all the characters in this novel possess combination names that point to real-world political, cultural, or scientific personalities that adds a further depth and commentary to the proceedings. The novel's story centres on the character of John the Savage. Despite being the son of two world state citizens, he grows up outside its influence on a savage reservation. His worldview, shaped by Shakespeare and natural human experience, makes him the novel's moral and metaphysical counterpoint to the engineered society. His name is a reflection of John the Baptist, who took up society in Judea at the time of Jesus. Both figures are outsiders who challenge dominant paradigms and speak uncomfortable truths. The use of Shakespeare as John's moral compass reinforces his role as a spiritual counterpoint to the world state. Bernard Marx is the secondary protagonist and is an alpha plus psychologist who feels alienated due to his small stature and unorthodox views. He craves individuality but also seeks social acceptance, embodying the tension between rebellion and conformity. His name is a combination of George Bernard Shaw, the Irish literary proponent of socialism, and Karl Marx, the father of communism. Helmholtz Watson is a gifted alpha lecturer who is disillusioned with the superficiality of world state life. Unlike Bernard, Helmholtz's dissatisfaction is philosophical. He yearns to create meaningful art and connect with deeper truths. His name is derived from Hermann von Helmholtz, a 19th century German physicist and physician who was known for his groundbreaking work in thermodynamics, sensory perception, and the conservation of energy. John B. Watson was the founder of behaviorism in psychology. He advocated for conditioning and control of behavior through environmental stimuli, which is another way of saying it's the science of mass manipulation. Mustafa Mond is the world controller of Western Europe. Mond is intellectually formidable and understands the cost of the world state's stability. He chose power over truth and now enforces the suppression of knowledge, art, and emotion. The official scholarly consensus is that Mustafa references Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the Turkish leader and modernizer who balanced tradition and reform, while the surname Mond is often linked to Alfred Mond, a British industrialist and politician. But I suspect that his name may be an example of Huxley's distinctly British wit. Mustafa is phonetically the same as must-haver, and monde is the French word for world, so that would make him an individual who must be in control no matter the cost to others. Lenina Crown is a beta worker at the hatchery. She is conditioned to embrace pleasure and conformity, yet she occasionally exhibits emotional depth and curiosity, especially in her interactions with John, which destabilizes her programming. Her name is the feminine version of Vladimir Lenin, the revolutionary and first chairman of the USSR. And the surname Crown is symbolic of the British monarchy and all the other monarchies in the world. Fanny Crown is Lenina's friend and co-worker. She is a mouthpiece for conventional world state values, reinforcing norms around sex, consumption, and emotional detachment. Her name may reference Fanny Kaplan, who attempted to assassinate Lenin, thereby adding ironic depth to her role as a defender of the status quo. Henry Foster is a conventional alpha male and one of Lenina's lovers. He exemplifies the ideal citizen, efficient, shallow, and thoroughly conditioned. His name is a corrupted version of the car manufacturer and industrialist Henry Ford. Ford was well known for being the master of automated working practices and maximum profit extraction. The director, Thomas Tamakin, is the head of the Central London Hatchery and Conditioning Centre. He represents the bureaucratic face of the world state and is revealed to be John's biological father, which is an ironic twist that undermines his authority and also hints at corruption. Linda is John's mother. She was originally from the world state, but became stranded on the Savage Reservation. Her addiction to soma and inability to adapt to either world makes her a tragic figure of dislocation. Pope is Linda's lover on the Savage Reservation. He introduces John to Shakespeare, which inadvertently plants the seeds for John's spiritual and philosophical awakening. Set in the 26th century, Brave New World unfolds in a dystopian society known as the World State. A global regime built on technological control, genetic engineering, and psychological conditioning. Natural birth has been abolished. Instead, humans are artificially gestated and assigned to castes, ranging from intelligent alphas to menial epsilons. Individuality, emotional depth, and personal relationships are suppressed in favour of stability, consumption, and superficial pleasure. The novel opens at the Central London Hatchery and Conditioning Centre, where the director and his assistant, Henry Foster, explain the mechanics of human reproduction and caste conditioning to a group of students. Through processes like Burkanovsky and Podsnap, embryos are cloned and chemically manipulated to fit predetermined roles. Children are indoctrinated via hypnopedia or sleep teaching and encouraged to engage in promiscuous sex and soma consumption, a state-sanctioned drug that eliminates discomfort. Bernard Marx, a discontented Alpha Plus psychologist, invites Lenina, a beta technician, to accompany him to the Savage Reservation in New Mexico, a rare enclave where people still live naturally. There they encounter John, the son of two world state citizens but raised amongst the savages. John's mother, Linda, was stranded there years earlier and gave birth outside the system. Bernard brings John and Linda back to London, where John becomes a sensation. Dubbed the Savage, he is paraded as a curiosity. But his values, shaped by Shakespearean literature and natural human experience, clashes violently with the artificiality of the world state. He is repulsed by its shallow pleasures, lack of spiritual depth, and mechanized existence. As John's discomfort grows, Bernard revels in his newfound social status, while his friend, Helmholtz, a gifted writer, shares John's yearning for deeper meaning. The trio's philosophical discussions culminate in a confrontation with Mustafa Mond, one of the world controllers. Mond defends the system, arguing that truth and beauty must be sacrificed for stability and happiness. John counters with a plea for suffering, freedom, and the right to be human. Unable to reconcile his ideals with the world state, John retreats to a lighthouse on the outskirts of civilization. There he attempts to live a life of ascetic purity, engaging in self-flagellation and ritual. However, the public tracks him down, turning his solitude into spectacle. Overwhelmed by guilt, grief, and the loss of autonomy, John ultimately takes his own life. The novel doesn't end with a revolution, but with resignation. The world state remains intact, its citizens pacified, its dissenters exiled or destroyed. There's no easy resolution, only a haunting vision of the true cost of engineered happiness and its effects on the human soul. The book is written in a style that is both clinical and ironic, precise in its descriptions yet emotionally detached. This deliberate sterility mirrors the world it depicts. The prose often reads like a scientific report, especially in the opening chapters where the hatchery and conditioning centre is described with cold exactitude. The use of impersonal narration and minimal physical characterization reinforces the interchangeability of individuals in the world state. Characters are rarely described in any detail, and when they are, it's often to highlight their deformities or artificial traits, thereby underscoring the dehumanizing effects of genetic engineering. The diction is deliberately paradoxical. There are euphemistic slogans like "ending is better than mending" and "a gram is better than a dam," which are used to soften sinister concepts such as consumer indoctrination and emotional suppression. These phrases are repeated throughout the novel, and they function like mantras that shape the citizen's subconscious. Their sing-song rhythm evokes nursery rhymes, infantilizing the population and reinforcing the atmosphere of engineered innocence. The atmosphere is one of eerie tranquility. On the surface, everything is orderly, pleasurable, and clean. But beneath this veneer lies a profound unease. The omnipresence of soma, the absence of grief, and the mechanized reproduction of human beings creates a world that is disturbingly hollow and soulless. Huxley evokes this hollowness through tonal contrast. Moments of synthetic joy are undercut by philosophical despair, especially in the character of John the Savage. His Shakespearean language, which is rich, emotive, and archaic, clashes violently with the sanitized and stale speech of the world state, which creates a linguistic tension that mirrors the novel's moral and metaphysical conflicts. Ultimately, the style serves as a philosophical purpose. By stripping emotion from the prose and saturating the atmosphere with artificiality, readers are forced to confront the cost of comfort, the dangers of conformity, and the erosion of soul. The novel's tone is one of an anaesthetized dystopia where the citizens are too drugged and programmed to understand that they're already in hell, and that perhaps is its most chilling achievement. The novel is a thematic labyrinth that weaves together critiques of technological control, the erosion of individuality, and the paradox of engineered happiness. At its core lies a confrontation between synthetic utopia and authentic humanity. Technology as control is the novel's most overt theme, and the use of technology is not to liberate but to institute a faceless set of processes that dominates all facets of human life. From the Bokanovsky process to hypnopedic conditioning, the world state weaponizes scientific advancement to suppress individuality and enforce conformity. There is no celebration of progress, only a warning. For when technology is employed en masse upon society, and it is also divorced from any ethical inquiry, then it becomes a tool of totalitarianism. The citizens are not only surveilled, measured and quantified, but they are also sedated to quell any emotions of disquiet. They are entertained in order to keep them distracted, and they are even biologically engineered to love their servitude. Humanity has thus been reduced to a hive-like structure where the majority of its citizens exist merely as drones. In this version of reality, pleasure and a surface veneer of democracy replaces the more standard Orwellian model of a dystopia that is built on fear and a hatred of a shared enemy. But each vision is but the flip side of the same insidious coin. Another core theme is the suppression of the truth. This is closely tied to technological control. This theme speaks of epistemological manipulation. Like all totalitarian regimes, the world state censors science, philosophy and history, replacing inquiry with indoctrination. Truth is destabilizing, so it is replaced with soma-induced hallucination and feelies. The character of Mustafa Mond embodies the root of evil. He understands the value of truth, but chooses to sacrifice enlightenment in order to ensure the stability of the regime. The average citizen therefore has a false picture of their own past, and are shut off from understanding how things came to be, and of any alternative way of running things or acting as a human being. Then we have individuality versus conformity. The novel's caste system, Alpha to Epsilon, represents a rigid stratification of human potential. Individual desires are irrelevant. Citizens are conditioned to perform their roles without question. Bernard and Helmholtz momentarily resist this programming, but their rebellion is ultimately absorbed or exiled. John the Savage, raised outside the system, becomes the tragic embodiment of unconditioned humanity. His struggle is not just personal, it's archetypal, echoing the mythic exile of the awakened soul in a soulless mechanized world. The illusion of happiness. Perhaps the most haunting theme is the incompatibility of happiness and truth. The world state achieves peace by eliminating pain, but also grief, love and meaning. Soma is the chemical sacrament of this false paradise, a substance that erases suffering, but also any depth of emotion. Huxley suggests that true happiness cannot be manufactured. It must instead be earned through suffering and struggling, and then alchemized through mechanisms of reflection and connection. The citizens of the world state are content, but they're not truly alive in any tangible sense. They exist like a shoal of fish, swimming aimlessly in a communal shallow pool. And lastly, we have consumerism and instant gratification. In this world, society's economic engine runs on perpetual consumption. Ending is better than mending becomes a mantra of planned obsolescence. Leisure is commodified, relationships are transactional, and even death is sanitized. The citizens are entrained to respond to these lures. It keeps their attention concentrated on petty and meaningless material and sensual pleasures, and away from any challenging or dangerous thoughts and emotions that don't align with the regime. Upon its release, the novel provoked a polarised response. Some critics hailed Huxley's dystopian vision as a masterstroke of satirical genius, while others condemned it as bleak, cynical, and morally unsettling. The novel's portrayal of a society engineered for pleasure and stability, at the cost of individuality, emotion, and truth, challenged prevailing notions of progress and modernity. In Britain, reviewers admired his intellectual daring but questioned the plausibility of his future world. While in the United States, where industrial optimism and Fordist ideals were more deeply entrenched, the novel was met with greater discomfort and even outrage. Critics often inevitably contrasted this novel with the other great literary dystopian novel, George Orwell's 1984. While Orwell's INGSOC regime emphasised surveillance, manufactured rage and fear, Huxley's world state relied on the far more subtle pleasure, conditioning and pharmacological pacification. This contrast sparked decades of debate over which model more accurately forecasts the trajectory of modern societies. Huxley himself weighed in with Brave New World Revisited, arguing that his vision was proving more prescient than Orwell's. Throughout the mid-20th century, the novel gained traction in academic and philosophical circles. Its themes resonated with post-war anxieties and the rise of consumer culture. Scholars began to interpret the world state as a critique not only of totalitarianism but of liberal democracies seduced by comfort and conformity. The character of John the Savage, with his Shakespearean idealism and tragic arc, became a symbol of resistance to dehumanizing systems. Today, nearly a century after its publication, it remains a cultural touchstone for those interrogating the balance between freedom and control, pleasure and purpose. Its legacy is not merely literary, but philosophical. It is a mirror held up to civilization, asking whether comfort is worth the cost of consciousness. Considering this novel after the first quarter of the 21st century, it no longer feels like a prediction of the far future, but much more like a documentary. All the elements that it spoke of are coming slowly into place and into focus. Following digitalization, the formation of trade blocs, and national and international reliance on ubiquitous global banking and transnational corporations, the world has shrunk significantly in size and is far more restrictive and controlled than it ever was in the past. The World Economic Forum plans and sets the tone for the general direction of the global international community, and it promises by 2030 that you will own nothing and will be happy. The entire Western world, from Australia to New Zealand, Canada, the USA, Ireland, the UK, plus nearly all European Union countries, are currently in the throes of a cost of living crisis where common groceries cost multiple times more than they did 5 years ago. Heating and other utilities now cost more than double and even triple in some places. And most are now priced out of owning a home, and many struggle to even afford renting. This is all suspiciously uniform in nature, regardless of the country, and all governments are oddly devoid of any fresh or effective ideas on how to solve any of this, despite formulating and executing a plan within a matter of days back in 2008 to bail out the failing banks that caused a global market crash. There are also significant whispers in the wings that fiat currency and cash money that we all know and love will soon become relics of the past as purchases shift towards fully digitalized systems tracked by blockchain technology. Already a substantial portion of our transactions occur online or remotely. Money has moved from being tangible and anonymous to paradoxically ephemeral and traceable. Some countries have rolled out extensive biometric exit and entry mechanisms at borders and service points, while others have begun trialling social credit style systems that reward sanctioned behaviours and penalise minor infractions. As financial systems tighten their grip and economic autonomy erodes, the next frontier of control is no longer just your wallet, it's your biology. Various tech giants are now making significant advances in implant technology, with the near future promising brain-to-computer interfaces that offer direct access to AI knowledge, enhanced health monitoring, and augmented reality overlays. Naturally, one would expect such devices to come with regular upgrades, tiered features, and subscription models, just like every other product in the digital ecosystem. And then there's the question of unsanctioned backdoor access to the purchaser's data, thoughts, and neural activity. The present now has a solid smell of corporate elite orchestration. The door on personal freedoms, even of one's own body and thoughts, is already slowly closing. All the while, the mass media machine keeps churning out the same books, music, and movies to distract us and keep up a pretense of normality. In about 20 years' time, I fully expect anyone picking up a copy of Brave New World and somehow still possessing an attention span adequate to make it all the way through the novel to put it down, puzzled, because it just seems to be about a single savage guy who lives out in the middle of nowhere and who has some strange quirks and ideas that make absolutely no sense at all. So what are your thoughts on this tale of misfits, worker drones, and totalitarianism? Which character did you like the most? Which scene did you find the most profound? Once more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more deep dives into the world of literature. Until next time, keep reading, and remember, it's probably best not to let the government and corporations have so much control over our lives. But before you go, all that remains to be said is, happiness is mandatory, individuality is obsolete, and the future is fully automated. Please consume responsibly.